Emily Dickinson, a presentation by Brittany Lynch. Early life. Emily Dickinson was born in Amherst, Massachusetts on December 10, 1830, to Edward and Emily Dickinson. Dickinson had an elder brother, Austin, and a younger sister, Lavinia. She attended Amherst Academy and graduated in 1847. She then attended Mount Holyoke Female Seminary for a year. Edward Dickinson was a successful attorney, treasurer of Amherst College, member of the Massachusetts legislature for 3 terms, and served in Congress for 1 term. He is known as a very respected man of good moral standing and extremely intelligent. Emily Norcross was a well-behaved woman that embraced her role as a mother to her 3 children. Austin Dickinson was also known to have a similar personality to that of Emily Dickinson. He followed in his father's footsteps in becoming a lawyer and eventually a treasurer of Amherst College. He married a schoolmate of Dickinson's, Susan Gilbert. Emily and Susan started out as great friends. However, Susan's extroverted personality and responsibilities as a mother of 3 children led to a quarrel between Dickinson and Susan. The 2 friends eventually drifted apart. Austin and Susan had a son they named Gilbert that Dickinson was extremely fond of. Lavinia and Dickinson remained close friends for their entire lives. Lavinia was also a recluse, but not to the same extent as Emily. Friendships. During her lifetime, Emily Dickinson had several male friendships. Of those, there were Benjamin Newton, Samuel Bowles, Reverend Charles Wadsworth, Thomas Wentworth Higginson, and Otis Phillips Lord. Benjamin Newton was Dickinson's first friend and mentor outside of her family. She met him through her father's law firm as he was a student working in his office. He encouraged Dickinson to pursue poetry. However, their friendship did not last long because of his tragic death. Samuel Bowles was another great friend of Dickinson and her entire family. Even though he didn't entirely understand her conventional poetic style, she still trusted his advice and sent him numerous letters. Some researchers believe Bowles was Dickinson's first love. Dickinson met Reverend Charles Wadsworth on her way back from visiting her father in Washington, D.C. Reverend Wadsworth is regarded as the reason for Dickinson's increase in the number of poems she wrote during 1862, of which she wrote approximately 366. Many researchers that have studied Dickinson believe she was in love with Reverend Wadsworth, but knew nothing could come of it because he was already married. Thomas Wentworth Higginson was an author that Dickinson mailed 4 of her poems. However, he was not able to understand their meaning and advised her to write her poems in a more conventional style. Dickinson submitted approximately 100 poems to Higginson in hopes of publication, but to no avail. Dickinson met Otis Phillips Lord during a meeting he had with her father, as he was also a lawyer. After Lord's wife died, they became very close and possibly intimate. He proposed to Dickinson against the advice of his nieces, but she declined his hand in marriage because she had to care for her aging mother and was concerned about adapting to a different lifestyle, as she was already 47. Later life. At the end of the 1860s, Dickinson's reclusion became more severe. She refused to go past the garden outside of her home. No one is sure what caused the increase in Dickinson's seclusion from the rest of the world. In 1882, Wadsworth, Lord, Gilbert, and her mother died. The death of so many close friends and relatives led Dickinson to have a mental breakdown for a few weeks. She eventually died of nephritis, inflammation of the kidneys, on May 15, 1886. Her poems after death. The fascicles that were found in Dickinson's room were discovered by her sister. The total number of Dickinson's poems is estimated to be approximately 1,800. Many letters written by Dickinson were also discovered after her death. Lavinia, with the help of a friend, altered Dickinson's poems to make them more conventional and then had them published a few at a time, starting in 1890. 24 years later, Martha Dickinson Banshee, Dickinson's niece, published the remaining poems. Dickinson's entire literary works were moved to Harvard, where Thomas H. Johnson published her complete and unaltered works. Recurring themes. A few recurring themes that occur in Emily Dickinson's works are life. Dickinson wrote about nature and other creatures found in nature, particularly butterflies. It is possible that Dickinson enjoyed writing about nature because that was the one thing she was able to experience without going too far from her home. In poem number 173, A Fuzzy Fellow Without Feet, she wrote about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Her writing on this transformation could represent the way she saw herself at the time she wrote this poem. Another recurring theme in Dickinson's work is death. Some of her most famous poems were regarding death. One of the most well-known poems she wrote was poem 712, Because I Could Not Stop for Death. This poem discusses how inevitable death is. It describes Dickinson getting picked up by death in a carriage, and on her way to die, she is taken through a brief history of her life. Dickinson's fascination with her own death shows how often it was on her mind. Works cited.